In one of Hong Kong's most notorious crimes, a woman was held captive, subjected to mistreatment, and brutally murdered. What made this case especially infamous was how her body was treated after her death. Abandoned as a child, Man-yee was raised in an orphanage, but at 15, she had to leave due to the orphanage's age limit. With no one to adopt her and nowhere to go, she became homeless and soon after fell into substance abuse. Fan was forced to turn to adult services, working in a brothel just to survive and feed herself. In her early 20s, Man-yee secured a job as a dancer at the Empress Karaoke nightclub. She eventually became romantically involved with one of her clients, who was also battling substance dependency. Their relationship deepened her struggles, and they ended up getting married. However, it wasn't long before her husband's true nature began to surface. Despite the abuse, she chose to stay with him. Over the next few years, they had 2 sons together, but their conflicts only intensified as time went on. By early 1997, Fan had returned to adult services and crossed paths with a 34-year-old man named Chan Man-lock. Chan was known as a wealthy socialite in the area. Their connection was immediate. Fan was a substance-dependent escort, and Chan was a substance dealer. He frequently paid her for long all-night sessions where they indulged in illicit substances, which he supplied. Chan Man-lock was a member of the Triads, a powerful Chinese organized crime syndicate, and not someone to be taken lightly. Despite his dangerous reputation, Fan became too comfortable around him. During one of their party-fueled nights, she stole his wallet, taking about $4,000 in cash. This would turn out to be the biggest mistake of her life. When Chan found out about it, he was furious. It wasn't just the loss of money that angered him, but the fact that Fan had the nerve to steal from him. Not satisfied with simply getting his money back, he demanded an additional $10,000 in interest. Fan agreed to repay him with her earnings, knowing it would take a long time to clear the debt. In March 1999, Chan had 2 of his men kidnap Fan and bring her to his apartment on Granville Road. The apartment was large, with 5 bedrooms, and was oddly filled with Hello Kitty merchandise such as curtains, bed sheets, decorations on the walls, and plush toys scattered everywhere. Chan intended to force Fan into non-stop prostitution until her debt to him was fully repaid. However, he continuously raised the interest on her debt, making it impossible for her to ever pay it off. As the debt grew, the gang also began venting their frustrations on her, subjecting her to frequent and brutal beatings, making it impossible for her to work. They would force themselves on her as often as they wished. They would also beat her with metal bars, stabbing her with cooking utensils, smashing pieces of furniture over her, and even tying her up in a standing position to use as a punching bag. It reached to the point where she was kicked in the head at least 50 times in one day. Fan reportedly became pregnant around this time, but the harassment continued. When she was wounded and scarcely able to move, the gang would rub spices on her open wounds. To make sure she didn't run away, they would repeatedly burn her with hot candle wax and even melt plastic over her legs. She was then forced to swallow even urine and feces. The gang would then force her to admit that she enjoyed everything. If she refused, they would continue to mistreat her, increasing the severity of their punishments. Fan's husband and kids were left to worry about her whereabouts. The group used various methods to inflict pain on her, including setting plastic straws on fire and hitting her feet with sticks. It got to the point where they wrapped her in electrical wires and left her overnight. They also stopped feeding her and packed her wounds with dirt and salt to ensure she never felt relief. After her condition worsened, potential clients stopped hiring her services, causing her to lose money for the group. She would lie on the floor, starving and drifting in and out of consciousness while the group watched TV or played video games. When the group went out for drinks, Fan was tied up and thrown onto the bathroom floor. The group responsible for torturing Fan included Chan Man-lok, the ringleader, along with his subordinate gangster Liang Wai-lung, who was said to be either 19 or 21, and Liang Xing-cho, aged 26. Also involved was a 14-year-old girl named Ah Fong. This mistreatment continued for a month, and on April 15, 1999, Fan finally succumbed to her wound. The group returned to the apartment, where Ah Fong found Fan deceased on the floor. They debated on how to dispose of the body, with most experts agreeing that it was more likely the actual injuries that led to her death. The next day, Chan decided to destroy Fan, dividing her into manageable portions and boiling them on the stove to prevent further decay and remove some of the smell. He woke up Ah Fong and instructed her to put the guts in hot water to stop them from smelling. Liang Xin-cho was boiling the head himself and called Ah Fong to look at it, who was scared and didn't want to look. He was correct, she thought, looking at it briefly, since it did resemble something from a horror film. If you ask me, one of the biggest mysteries about this case is probably how they could even develop an appetite during all of this. They threw some noodles onto the nearby burner while they were boiling Fan's head in a pot and stirred it from time to time. They alternated between stirring the skull and their soup with the same spoon. The head had reduced to a mere skeleton by the time they finished eating. They made the decision to take the skull and stitch it into the head of a big mermaid Hello Kitty plush. This is the origin of the case's name. Why they even choose to take the time and trouble to do this is still a mystery. They also chose to save a tooth and several organs, for reasons that are unclear. But they put the rest in the trash at the apartment building. Things went silent for approximately a month. They appear to have gotten away with what they had done. In May, Ah Fong went to the local police station. Strangely enough, she informed the police she was being plagued by a ghost. This specific ghost, she said the cops, had been slain and bound with electrical wire. But since this was just a ghost story, the cops didn't really take her seriously. They dismissed it, thinking she was just being goofy or suffering from bad dreams. But that was before Ah Fong revealed to them that she had contributed to the death of this specific woman. Evidently, this had a significant impact on everything. After pressing her for more information, the cops led her outside to the flat where the most of the bloodshed took place. It was at this point that they realized how grounded in reality her nightmares were. She led them to the Hello Kitty mermaid doll, where they discovered the skull. The entire group was located, apprehended, detained, and brought to trial. She made the decision to testify against the group's other members. She informed the authorities that she was Chan Man-lok's partner. However, she was also highly probable to be one of his sex workers. This case rapidly turned into a public show across Hong Kong. The vast majority of the population had never encountered a situation of this scale before. As a fairly secure and up-to-date city, it was hard for them to fathom such a nefarious activity happening in such proximity. One aspect of the case that intrigued them was the frightening contrast between one of the most brutal crimes they had ever encountered and one of the most adorable icons they could imagine. Many individuals were struck by the combination of terror and purity. The trial would continue for a period of 6 months. Ah Fong proceeded to give testimony in return for total immunity. To find peace and calm Fan's spirit, she confessed every disturbing detail of the group's actions, aiming to ease her conscience and end the torment. Including the body in a fridge and cooking utensils, was presented in court alongside the real skull. The strong odor reportedly filled the courtroom during the trial. Psychiatrists assessed the men showing no remorse at all. Due to the condition of Fan's body, no clear explanation for her death was found, leading to a manslaughter conviction instead of murder. Despite doubts, the men received life sentences without parole eligibility for 2 decades, decided by Court Justice Peter Nguyen in December 2000. The 3 criminals involved were spared the death penalty due to Hong Kong's laws. One of the men was released in 2014 due to lack of evidence, but quickly got in legal trouble again. In 2022, he was sentenced to prison for assault. The memory of the victim is honored annually in a candlelight vigil.